Mother's Day, what a wonderful occasion. Amen. Before we get into the sermon for today, let me add a few things. I know that Mother's Day for a lot of folks is difficult. Okay, it is. We have folks in our congregation, this is the first Mother's Day that they've celebrated alone. Okay, there are other folks who are sitting to your right or to your left. They've tried their whole life to have children, and they haven't been able to have children. And every Mother's Day is a reminder of what their life is not. There's other folks in our congregation today who didn't have the best of moms coming up. And when we hit Mother's Day, it's tough on them because their whole life was spent under a mom who didn't have their best interest at heart and didn't extend love to them. Maybe that mother didn't know how to extend love to them. I'm reminded of a man, he was a grown man, he was in his middle 60s, and he attended a church that I pastored in Florida, and a Vietnam vet, 6'4", probably 220, big dude. But his mom was absolutely ruthless. And on Mother's Day, it was just hard on him. And I remember on one occasion we were talking about moms, and he couldn't take it. He was so overcome with his upbringing that he just shouted out something, and he felt embarrassed about it, but it was hard on him. Mother's Day was difficult on him. Every time he'd try to talk, if he said something out, if he didn't use the right syntax, his mom would just slap him across the face and call him an idiot. So, having said that, Mother's Day is not special for everybody, okay? But the vast majority of us, it's a big deal. And even though I can sympathize with you, to a certain degree, because I have some of those emotions, but I have them on Father's Day, okay? Still, the Bible tells us to rejoice with those who rejoice, right? And even though you may not today be having the best of days, the neighbor to your right or to your left is. And today is a day to celebrate moms. Because moms, when it's done right, listen to me, brothers and sisters, when mom and the motherhood and all of that's done right, it changes lives. It changes lives. And I'm a testimony to that. We're going to get into some of those things that I was taught by my mother. This is my second Mother's Day without my mom. And so it's weird. Those of you who have lost your mama, it's weird, isn't it? It's weird no matter how old you are to be orphaned at a certain age. But it's weird. But I'm here to tell you that thanks be to God, I've got her example that's been left with me. Because she had to work very, very hard when my daddy took off and left. And so we're going to celebrate all moms, and I hope that through what I was taught, that'll be a blessing to you today. But before we get into that, some lighthearted things here. At age 4, kids think of their moms and they say, my mama can do anything, don't they? At 8 years old, they say, my mama knows a lot, a whole lot. At 12 years old, they say, well, my mama doesn't quite know everything. That's where my oldest is at. At 14 years old, they say, naturally, mama doesn't know that either. At 16, they say, Mom, she's hopelessly old-fashioned. At 16, they say that. At 18, they say, that old woman, she's way out of date. At 25 years old, they say, well, she might know a little bit. At 35 years old, they say, before we decide, let's get mama's opinion. That's at 35, right? At 45, they say, I wonder what mama would have thought about that. And then at 65, they say, boy, I wished I could talk it over with mama. Such is life. Young people, listen to your mamas. They got a lot of sense. Can I get a witness? Yeah. They've been put here by God to keep you straight until you get old enough to listen to God for yourself. You see, you're not fully cooked yet. And mamas are fully cooked. And they'll help you, keep you on the straight and narrow until you can get fully cooked so that you can listen to the Lord for yourself, and then He'll keep you on the straight and narrow. Come on, somebody. That's the way this thing works. So some of you young people in here may be chafing under the discipline and the yoke of your mama, but it's good for you because she'll keep you on the straight and narrow, keep you out of trouble until the Lord can keep you on the straight and narrow and keep you out of trouble. Someone got together at salary.com and investigated how much you'd have to pay a full-time mom with all the work that she does. And you know what they determined? That a mom who's a stay-at-home full-time mom earns the equivalent of a salary of $85,876 a year. Prudy got excited about that. Because she was one. Dick, look at me, son. Get your checkbook out. But mama's work. But you know, it goes beyond that. There's some things that, how many of you know when it comes to mamahood that you can't pay people to do when it comes to motherhood? You know, like making sure that each kid has the exact number of sprinkles on their cupcake. How many know that's the way that has to work? When you got more than one kid, it gets down, it gets down to rocket science. It better be absolutely perfect. How many know some of you moms sometimes, some of you moms may understand this, it gets difficult and you have to get out of the shower real quick. And how many of you ever jumped out with only one leg shaved? Or maybe up to the knee because you're in a hurry because there's so much to be done. Some of you moms might understand this. If you hide in the bathroom to get alone, you might be a mama. How many of you know what I'm talking about there? You know, but still they stick their fingers under the door, don't they? Are you in there? You're like, God, please. I used to be cool. And now this. You might be a mom if your child throws up and you catch it. Right? But you also might be a mom if you're at a party and another kid throws up and you keep right on eating. You might be a mom if you've mastered the art of putting food on a plate and making sure that no food touches the other food. You might be a mom if you hope ketchup is a vegetable because it's the only thing your kid will eat. You might be a mom if you cut your husband's sandwiches into funny little shapes. You might be a mom if you stop criticizing the way your mama raised you. You might be a mom when Bambi's on and you know that Bambi's mama's about to be killed. You run to the DVD player and push fast forward to get it through that part. And you might be a mom if you've read that the average 5-year-old asks 437 questions a day and you're glad that your kid is above average. But as I said, we're going to go over some things. I'm going to share some things with you today that my mama taught me. And if you can identify with some of those things, great. But how many of you know, as a preacher, you can only speak of what you know. You know, I used to say, well, I used to get these books and stuff from people who wanted to write books on raising kids, and then I realized they didn't have any. I'm like, what are they doing writing a book on raising kids? They have no idea, right? So from mom and from motherhood, I got everything I know from my mother. At 5 years old, my daddy left. And when I say he left, I mean he left physically and emotionally. When I say he's gone, there's some parents, when they leave or there's a divorce, the parents are still involved in the life of the kid, even though the marriage is dissolved. But in my case, when my father left, he not only left physically, he left emotionally too. So that left a void, and my mama had to fill it. And so in order to fill that, she had to become a strong-willed woman. I think that's why I married Kristen. That girl's a strong, independent woman, and she won't listen to anything I say. So I'm going to share some things with you today that I learned from my mother that I'm trying to pass on to my own children. And like I said, moms and some of you dads, if you can identify, great. The first one is discipline. Discipline. My mother taught me a little something about discipline. My mom believed in discipline. She had to. I don't know if you can tell or not, but I've got a strong, stubborn streak of my own. And my mom believed in discipline, and she had a philosophy concerning the discipline of her children. She said and thought that you just can't whip a kid a little bit. Because if you whip a kid just a little bit, all you do is get them mad. My mama believed that you got to whip a kid beyond them getting mad so that they can get the real deal. And I'm going to tell you what, I'm here to tell you, she knew how to shell down the corn. I was raised in southern Alabama, and a lot of the men that were in our community would leave for maybe a week or 2 weeks at the time and would go off into the Gulf Coast and work on the oil rigs. So they'd be gone a lot. And these youngsters that I grew up with, they were raised by their mom probably about, or without their dads, I should say, probably about from either half to 2/3 of the year, their daddies weren't there. And so when they would get in trouble, I'd hear about it, and they say, boy, I got into some trouble, and boy, my mama, she's mad with me, but she told my daddy, and she's going to tell him, and when he gets home from the oil rigs, I'm going to get it. And so in those contexts, the dad was the disciplinarian, right? But I didn't understand that. I couldn't identify with that because my mama didn't have somebody she could turn discipline over to. She'd get it on me right on down. And I'd say, what? I said, what? I asked these young guys that I was running with. I said, your mama, she doesn't whip you? They said, yeah, but it don't hurt. And I'd say, well, my mama, she could get it. Now listen, my mama, she probably went too far sometimes. If she thought that she needed it, I've seen her like Zorro pick up an iron and get the cord of an iron. Now let me tell you something. Those of you who have not been baptized by the cord of an iron, you double up a cord on an iron, son, that will shell down the corn. And let me tell you what, you get one lash of that across your rear end, you tighten up real quick. My mama just had this thing about her. She took a yardstick one time. By the time she got done with that thing, it was in 1-inch increments. She broke that thing in 100 pieces on me. She meant business. I'm telling you, she whipped me and disciplined me today that if people at social services would hear about it, they'd come to the house and investigate. And that started becoming a thing when I was a kid coming up. And I made the mistake of one time telling her that I was going to call Child Protective Services. Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. Because I told her, I said, Mom, I'm going to call Child Protective Services on you. And she told me straight up, she said, go on and call them. I'll whip them too. My mama didn't need the government at her house at all. She could handle her business. But not everything was a whipping. I got caught one time as a youngster stealing watermelons. South Alabama, there's nothing else to do. Crime wave had hit Clayhatchie. I was stealing watermelons. And I stole this watermelon. And the owner saw me. And I dropped the watermelon and I ran. But she saw me. And she went to my mama. Oh, no. Don't do that on a man. Have mercy. Please. So I got home and my mama, she's acting all dumb. What'd you do today, son? Well, I just said whatever. She said, well, I knew what I'd gotten into, but you lie. That's what you do. When you get busted, you lie. And she said, well, I had a visitor today. I said, you did? Who was that? She said, Mr. Kelly stopped by here today. I said, did he now? Well, the gig was up. And so I said, are you going to whip me? She said, no, I ain't going to whip you. She says, but you're going to go down there, you're going to knock on his door, and you're going to tell him you're sorry for stealing these watermelons, and you're going to ask him if there's anything you can do to repay them watermelons. Whew. Can I be honest with you, brothers and sisters? I had rather take a whipping than to do that. And I cried all the way to Mr. Kelly's house and sucked it up when I got to the door and knocked on it. Mr. Kelly, is there anything I can do? I'm so sorry. And he was gracious and said, no, son, just stop stealing my watermelons. I sell them. I need that for income. Knock it off. And I said, yes, sir, I promise I won't ever do it again. But I'm here to tell you, the bottom line is my mama knew a little something about discipline. You did not want to show off in a store? She would, my Lord, the one thing she couldn't handle was disrespect out of a kid. I'm telling you, she could not handle it. She wanted people to know she could handle her business. Can I suggest something to mamas today? And I know that probably most of you have got this together, but a lot of people watch this online and stuff. Listen, how many know we need to get back to a healthy dose of discipline? I ain't telling you to beat your youngins. Maybe a little bit. But don't be harsh and don't be brutal with them. But yet at the same time, the Bible tells us that foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. And that the rod of correction will drive that foolishness far from them. And I'm not telling you to beat on your kids and leave marks on them, but I am telling you that every now and again they need to have a knot snatched in their rear end, because it drives foolishness away from them. Now, we may get a visit from CPS here or Child Protective Services or whatever it be. I'll handle that when we have to handle it. What I don't understand is our society telling us that things are going sideways and we can't do anything about it, and the only thing that works is discipline, and they want to get rid of discipline. I mean, you can't have your cake and you eat it too. And I know that there are some kids, some parents, they don't know what to do with their children. They don't feel like they know how to discipline their kids. They don't feel like they know how to make their kids mind. Look, all eyes on me. You can make your kids mind. I've been to the circus. They make tigers jump through hoops of fire. You can make your kid mind. I'll get over here on this side. I've been to the circus. They make tigers jump through hoops of fire. We can make our kids mind. We just got to learn how to do it. And some people say, well, I can't do it. I cry when I'm with my kids. Well, here's the thing. If you're that sensitive, I'm sorry. But listen to me. You either cry now or you cry later when they go to jail. Again, I'm not telling you to beat them into some place where, you can get into trouble. But God made a lot of padding back here. I'm not telling you to beat them on the back or the legs or anything else, but I'm here to tell you, discipline works. And if we're ever going to regain our children, that starts in the home. We can no longer, church, and it starts in the church house. We can no longer send our youngins to school and expect our school teachers to teach them discipline. They're there to teach them 2 plus 2. Am I going sideways? Or am I talking the truth here to you? Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't reinforce what we're trying to teach them in the house. Absolutely. But we've turned all the discipline over to the school teachers, and they can't do anything about it. Because they took whippings out of school. I know. They used to wear my rear end out. And look, here was the deal when I was coming up. You got in trouble at school, you got it double when you got to the house. Because you were not going to reflect poorly on your mom and your daddy. And I'm just here to tell you that maybe we need to relearn the art of discipline in our homes. That it'll go a long way. And when we finally do release our youngins into the world, that they'll know how to act and behave and be self-disciplined because we've taught it to them. Somebody better come on and give God praise for discipline. I'm here to tell you. Another thing that my mama taught me, respect. Woo-hoo. Respect for your fellow man and yourself. Respect. I can remember my mama whipping me, and I'd try to get away, and she'd grab my arm. Anybody know what I'm talking about? And would whip me in a circle like this. Me trying to get away, and I couldn't. And the whole time she was wearing my rear end out, she'd say this: you ain't got to love me, but you're going to respect me. Ooh, that rings in my ears. I'm a grown man. That just sent a shudder down my spine. It has rung true all these years. You ain't got to love me, but you will respect me. How many of you know we've lost the art of respecting our fellow man? We watch TV where people scream and yell at one another all the time, and we disrespect one another, and it's nauseating at this point. It's almost bizarre when you find someone who knows how to be nice to somebody else. Because we've been so conditioned because of our appetites for Fox News and CNN and MSNBC and everything else that we fill our spirits with, that we think that that's the right way to behave. Look at me, brothers and sisters. That's not the right way to behave. We've got to get back to where we learn how to respect one another. What in the world happened to respect? How about respect for our elders? If I see another young person address an adult by their first name, I'm going to pull my hair out. Listen, you look at me and say, Pastor John, that's a small thing. No, it's not. We need to get back. Listen, it starts in the small things. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Please. Thank you. All those kinds of pleasantries like that, we need to be teaching our children that. That was demanded of me when I was coming up. There was no way I would address someone who was older than me by their first name. It was Mr. So-and-so, Miss So-and-so. I didn't go up to an elder and say, hey, Roger, what's up? I would have picked my mouth off the floor. You didn't do that. That was a sign of disrespect. We need to relearn the art of respecting our elders. We need to relearn the art of not looking down on people. You've never stood in that man's shoes, seen things through his eyes, or stood and watched with helpless hands while the heart inside you dies. So you help your brother along the way no matter where he starts. For the same God that made you made him too. These men with broken hearts. We just got to get back to that. And all of that starts in the home. Have a healthy respect not only for the people that you see, but also for yourself. My mama taught me a healthy respect for myself. She spoke life into me. Hey, there's something too in the Old Testament when these young kids would beg their mamas and daddies for a blessing. Y'all need to listen to Pastor John today. There is something to the Old Testament saints when they'd go to their mamas and daddies and ask them for a blessing. Because let me tell you something. What comes out of your mouth can set the course for your child's life. And you need to speak life into your children. How many of you know that children are aggravating? Huh? Come on, can I get a witness? Kids are aggravating. And you kids, y'all listen to me. Look up here at Pastor John. Y'all know I love y'all. But God, y'all are aggravating. And God has given y'all to us, and we try our best with you, but sometimes we want to just pinch your little heads off. But even though they irritate us, mamas, daddies, even though they irritate us, and even though we want to just say, do me a favor and go away, we can't. We have to muster up something on the inside of us and speak life into our children. If you will just speak life into your children, it'll go a long way. Come on, somebody. It'll go a long way. Speak life into your children. Speak life into them. Listen, my mama told me every day that I could do anything I wanted to do, and I knew she meant it. She wasn't just blowing smoke. She meant it when she spoke that stuff into my life. John, boy, you can do anything you want to do. Now go do it. Let me tell you what, I've relied on that as an adult. You need to hear that you can do it. There's nothing that I face that I know that with God's help I cannot whip. There's no doubt about that. And that stuff that comes out of me, that you feel out of me, that I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I'm going to whip it. That comes out of me was instilled in me because of my mama. My grandma gave it to me too. Let me tell you, every day of my adult life, my grandma would call me on the phone until the day she died. And she'd tell me two things. John, boy, I love you and the Lord loves you. Every day of my life I heard that. Phone would ring. I knew it was Grandma. Hey, Grandma, John, boy, I love you and the Lord loves you. God. Hey, you got those two things, man, in your arsenal. There is absolutely nothing you can't do. And our kids need to hear that. Mamas, speak life into your children. They need to hear it from soft lips. Daddies are hard sometimes. Come on, men. Daddies are hard sometimes, but I'm telling you what, women, they have a tenderness about them that they can share that word with them, and it will deposit itself deep in the spirit of your children, and it will bring forth fruit. You have to do that. Stand up for yourself. My mama taught me how to do that. She used to tell me, she said, boy, you get into trouble, you're on your own. Anybody know what I'm talking about? She'd say this though, but if you're in the right, I'm with you and I'll stand with you all the way to the dying end. If you're in the right. Now if you're in the wrong, you get to suffer the consequences. You're on your own. You get yourself in jail, get yourself out of jail. One of the worst things you can do is get them out of jail first time, because they know then that you're going to do it continuously from then on. And they'll hound you and wear you out. I'm going to tell mine right now. You get yourself in jail, you're on your own. Get yourself out. Don't turn to me. I ain't going to give you a dime. You can sit in there and rot for all I'm concerned. And I teach my kids that. Now listen, I know it's not popular, but I teach my kids to defend themselves. I don't want my children to be bullies, but I teach my kids to defend themselves. And I tell them, I say, listen, if you start it, you're on your own. But if somebody else starts with you and they don't leave you alone, that's the distinction that I put in there. Don't be a hothead, always looking to punch somebody in the mouth. But if somebody won't leave you alone and they're a bully, you have my permission to punch them right in the mouth. Now listen, listen now, I'm just telling you, listen, now before you get all religious on me and start telling me, well, Jesus says to turn the other cheek. I agree. But pacifism will only take you so far. There comes a point in a time where you got to turn it on when you need to turn it on. Thank you, Jason. Nice to have a fellow redneck in the congregation. But I tell him, I say, now look, Curry, some boy is bullying you, and you pop him in the mouth, and he won't leave you alone, and you pop him in the mouth. Okay, you got to understand, there's consequences to that. Because of school, they're going to, they may suspend you. They're going to put you in ISS, in-school suspension, or whatever it may be. Okay, you got to be prepared. There's going to be consequences for punching that boy in the mouth. But Daddy's going to take you to get ice cream. Because that's the way we roll. Don't be a bully. But if someone doesn't back off, because listen, you have to respect yourself. You got to learn to respect yourself. And there comes a time when enough is enough. And I'm trying to teach my kids that. Listen, I was picked on as a kid. That's hard to believe, but I was picked on as a kid. And my mama knew I was shy, timid. She signed me up to play football. And I was scared because I was just a little boy. And she said, I got to do something with this boy. He's too shy. He's too timid. Everybody runs over him. Well, I was out there one day, and there was a boy bullying me. And he'd knocked me to the ground. And this was before practice. And I didn't know it, but my mama was watching. And she watched that boy roughhouse on me and knock me to the ground. I'd get up, and he'd knock me back down. And I didn't know it that she was watching this, but she was behind me in the parking lot. And all of a sudden, I heard her voice, and she said, "John, get him!" Ho, ho, ho! Something like fire started in my feet, come through my loins. And how do you know it wasn't good for that boy that day? Something clicked on that day. She'd watched it till she couldn't handle it anymore. And John, get him, became a theme for me. And there's times even today I'm a pit bull because I heard when I was about 9 years old, "John, get him." Listen, that'll revolutionize your life. Thank God for mamas. But I've got some learning to do with my own kids. I'm trying to teach them to self-respect. My two daughters were watching Author on PBS. Y'all know that little show, Author? It's a cartoon on PBS. And there was this bully in there, and he put a spider in a girl's hair. And she screamed and had a fit because she had spider in her hair. And I had my two girls there. And I asked the oldest one, Faith, I said, "Faith, what would you do if a boy put a spider in your hair?" She said, "I'd tell the teacher." I said, "Emily," now Emily's my middle girl. I said, "Emily, what would you do if a boy put a spider in your hair?" She said, I'd kick him in the face. So you see, I've got some work cut out for me, right? I got to get one to be a little bit more assertive, right? And being Christian, we got one that we got to restrain the madness in the other one. So we got some work to do. But mamas can do that. Thank God for them to give us this wonderful thing inside of us called self-respect. It's hard work. How many of you know that a man's work is from sun to sun, but a mama's work is never done? A man's work is from sun to sun, but a mama's work is never done. It takes a lot of work. Y'all getting anything out of this? Good. Here's something else my mama told me and taught me and instilled in me. Do for others. Do for others. How many of you remember when you were a teenager, those delicious lie-ins till about noon? Oh, they were so great. Anybody remember? I don't either. Because my mom would obligate me and get me up every Saturday morning to go do work for other people. How many of that gets old after a while? But my mom would obligate me. I'd come in from all night doing God knows what, and she'd be in there knocking on the door, waking me up on a Saturday morning saying, John, you need to get up. I'm like, Mom, I don't want to get up. Well, I told Mr. Jones you'd go cut his grass. I'm like, Mom, don't quit, stop obligating me. I don't want to be obligated. Well, get on up. I told him you'd be there at 8 o'clock. Come on, chop, chop. And then you get over there and he'd have this beat-up lawnmower you got to spend an hour on working on it first before you could even get it cranked. Then you'd have to cut this stuff called Bahia grass that we had in South Alabama that choked the death out of a lawnmower. You know, and you're out there in this South Alabama heat and you're begging that the Lord would take you in your sleep. It was miserable. But my mom taught me to do things for other people. It didn't matter if it was cutting grass or picking their peas. Hey, that's miserable. A garden, listen, if it's 95 degrees in the outside temperature, in the garden it's 195 degrees. And you're out there picking peas for someone and you don't get any of the enjoyment of eating them. You're picking them for someone else. But yet your mama got you up and obligated you to go pick these peas for people. Cut down trees, fix cars, whatever it was. It was mostly for the elderly, but my mama taught me to do for others. I'm glad she did now that I'm older, because it's a joy when my children start complaining. And I got to say, I got you a job to do. I told so-and-so. It's just so glorious when you get to revisit that thing on your kids. But I'm glad I had that. I'm glad I got that in my heart, that you help people no matter what, even if it does inconvenience you. It's the Christ-like thing to do. You go and you help people. You go above and beyond what they would even do for you. That's why it's called being a believer in Christ. Christ went far and beyond than we would do for ourselves. He went the extra mile. Come on, somebody. And that is our example, that we're supposed to do the same thing. And you do for those who cannot pay you back. What good is it for you to do something when you know you're going to get something in return? You do for others what they cannot do for themselves, because the mindset today, and I've heard it among young people, this is the mindset today: I'm going to get mine. I'm going to get mine. Time out. That is the wrong attitude to have. You want to find your life, you're going to lose it. You want to find it, you just see what I'm saying? Then you have to lose it for the sake of Christ. And I'm here to tell you, this attitude of I'm going to get mine will ruin you, young people. Listen to me. Listen to me. Remember, God gave you adults to pour into you because you're not fully cooked yet. Listen to Pastor John. If you have an attitude that it's all about you, you will ruin yourself. Because you'll grow older and you'll realize it ain't about you. And you'll never, ever be able to get along with people if you have this attitude that it's all about you. You have to learn. You want to get ahead in life? Listen to me, young people. You want to get ahead in life? Serve somebody. Let me say that again. Do you want to get ahead in life? Serve somebody. You serve people and you do for others. Every door of opportunity will not only swing open, it will be kicked down if you'll learn to do for others. I'm just here to tell you, take it for what it's worth. Mothers do an awesome job of teaching their children to do for others. Moving right on along, here's something else that my mama taught me. Love and mercy. Whew. Don't you know that the world needs a little bit more of that? As I said, I grew up hard. We didn't hardly have a lot of money. And we had troubles with lawnmowers. I'm telling you, this grass that we had in southern Alabama called Bahia, I'm telling you, it was bad on a lawnmower. We just could never seem, we had the roughest luck with lawnmowers when I was a kid. Here came a man one day, as if an angel had dropped out of heaven. And he showed up at our house with a lawnmower. And he wanted to sell it to my mama for pennies on the dollar. Now listen, we grew up hard, didn't hardly have enough money to make the ends meet at the end of the month, but my mom scraped up some money and bought this push mower. Well, we were about to go somewhere. I can't remember where we were going, but we left. When we got back, guess what? The lawnmower was gone. We thought, my Lord, we just bought this lawnmower. Someone stole it from us. Well, come to find out, what had happened was this man who sold us this lawnmower had been on a drunk. He sold us the lawnmower, took the money, waited for us to leave, come and stole the lawnmower so he could go sell it to somebody else to make him some more money to get him something else to drink. That was the racket that he had going on. Well, listen, you don't tell a 17-year-old redneck, right, that someone just stole money from their mama. I mean, that's the last thing you do. So I got some other rednecks together, me and some of my buddies, and I said, listen, it is time to we're going to get our $35 out of this fella, one way or another. So we found out where he lived, and we rode over there to his house, and we started thinking about what we could do to exact $35. No, it wasn't $35. That's how much he paid for it, but we wanted to do thousands of dollars worth of damage. See what I'm saying? That's why people say all the time, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth is ruthless. No, it ain't. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth was designed and built to restrain the madness in you. Because God knows our hearts. Someone takes $35 from us, we don't want to get the $35 back. No, we're going to exact a pound of flesh out of you. We're going to do more than that. So as an act of mercy, God said, no, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. People look at that negatively. It's not negative, it's positive. Because God is restraining your madness. You see that? So this guy took $35. So we showed up, and I said, look at that porch, boys. I said, we could hook to that with our trucks. With some chains. And we could pull that porch right off the house. Look at it. I said, look how it's built. It's just linked to on there. So we studied in our minds. We said, we're going to come back about 2 o'clock in the morning. And listen, this is what a redneck without Jesus thinks. So we'll come back here about 2 o'clock in the morning when he's in there drunk. And I said, we'll hook to that porch. And when he walks out in the morning, he'll do a face plant. Now, ain't that's terrible, ain't it? I should rebuke such things as that in Jesus' name. But that's the plan that we had. But guess what? Before that night came, that dude showed back up at our house. And he said, Miss White, I wanted to tell you, I'm sorry. I took your lawnmower and I took your money. I've been on a 2-week drunk. I finally got sober and I've cleared my head up. I come back to tell you I'm sorry. Well, I was standing behind Mama ready to get it on. And my mom said, that's all right. It's all good. She let him off, just like that. I thought, my goodness, how does somebody do that? Well, if you got love and mercy in your heart for your fellow man, you can do that. If you're trying to exact a pound of flesh out of people all the time, you're not able to do that. And so my mama taught me about love and about mercy. She was a product of the 60s. where all you need is love. Y'all maybe know what I'm talking about. Flower child and all that. Weird stuff. She was a product of the 60s, and she loved love and all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And then, of course, here I come along in the 80s, and Tina Turner started singing, "What's Love Got to Do with It?" And that was my theme. What's love got to do with it? My mama heard that. She says, "Love's got everything to do with it." And we used to have a good time with that. But she taught me how to love people. There was no African Americans in the town that I grew up in, South Alabama. Zero. There was an African American family that moved down the road from us within a half a mile. A couple of weeks went by. There was a cross burnt in their yard. They left town. But my mama didn't play that. And she'd ride into town. We lived out in the country. She'd ride into town, and she'd get my friends that I played football with, and was buddies with. And she'd get my African-American friends and bring them out to the house so that we could play with one another. Thanks be to God for an example like that. That it doesn't matter about what color skin you got. Doesn't matter what you do. We are here to love God and love our neighbor. That's what we do. We'll let God sort the stuff out later on. But as for me and my house, we're going to love the Lord, we're going to serve God, and we're going to love and serve one another. That's what we're going to do. And that's what Fam Church is going to do. Doesn't matter. Listen, you do whatever you do. You live however you live. You do what you do. But I'm going to tell you what. You're going to have a friend in Pastor John. No matter what. Right? Unless you try to kill me. Then I got to get redneck on you. But you understand, within reason, you and I, we're going to be friends and we're going to be buddies. And I'm going to serve you and I'm going to love you. And I expect the same out of you to me. That's the way we're going to roll. Love and mercy. My mama taught me that. And I thank God for that. Lastly this morning, and we're going to give away some things, my mama taught me about hard decisions. As I said, when I was about 5 years old, my daddy left. And when he left emotionally and physically. Now let me tell you something. When you're a single mom with 2 kids that are 15 months apart from one another, someone leaves you, and you get and your marriage dissolves, let me tell you what. You have just created a tough road to hoe. Can I get a witness in the house? That is hard. Listen, we got 3 of them, and it's hard for me and my wife together to raise them. But you got a single mom with 2 kids. That's hard. It is really, really difficult. And my mom had to make a very difficult decision. Do I go out to work, right, and provide financially for my boys and leave them alone to run the roads and do whatever it is that they want to do? Or do I stay home and make sure that I give them the love and the attention that they need, but yet the finances are not going to be there? And that's a hard decision to make. That's a difficult decision to make. And my mama made it. She says, I had rather stay home with my boys and raise them and love on them. Well, when you do that, how many know you pay for every decision you make? The payment on that decision was there was no income coming into the home. And I was raised in abject poverty. I mean, nothing. You got, how much is 0 from 0? 0. And I was raised in that. And my mama had to go back to school. And she had to sit up late. I can remember, I can close my eye and see her sitting up in her bed doing math from the local junior college. Getting up an extra hour early in the morning doing some kind of English paper that she had to, listen, she had to pick herself up with God's help and move on and make hard life decisions. Life is hard. My grandma had it hard. I was raised by 2 women. My grandma had it hard. My papa, bless his heart, my dad was left. My grandpa was a drunk. And I saw 2 women work hard. Listen, I saw my grandma and grandpa were in that era where the man did nothing. How many know what I'm talking about? I mean, nothing. My grandma would get up. This was her daily routine. Every day, every year of her life, and she lived to be 89. Get up in the morning before the sun comes up. Go out into the garden and work in the garden until the sun come up. Leave the garden, go in the house, cook breakfast for my grandfather. After she cooked the breakfast for my grandfather and he would eat, she'd wash the dishes, get herself together, and go to work at a sewing factory. Worked in a sewing factory all day long. Get off work, come home, change clothes. She always wore dresses. Go out into the garden. She'd grab her dress like this and pull it up and would pick peas and butter beans and cut okra and stick them in her dress as she went down the rows. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Work like that till supper time. Go in the house, get cleaned up, cook supper. As soon as she cooked supper, then she had to clean up all the dishes. Then she'd have to sit down and shell all the peas and all the butter beans and put all the okra up and all that, all the while getting my grandpa beers. And she'd collapse in the bed at night and get up the next morning and do it all over again. And do that day after day, month after month, year after year. Young people, I know you feel like I'm being hard on you today, but you better listen to me. You better be careful who you hitch your wagon to. You don't know. You think you got it hard now under your mama or under your daddy. You better listen to Pastor John. Life can get a whole lot rougher just like that. I'm here to tell you, life is going to require out of us some hard decisions. I saw my mama have to make hard decisions. But you live in an environment like that, you learn how to make hard decisions. And thank God for moms who know how to buck up underneath tremendous weight that most of us can possibly fathom, to have to be able to buck up underneath that and to shore herself up and to continue to raise kids in the middle of tragedy. I'm here to tell you, that's hard to do. But with God's help, it can be done. I thank God for hard times, because the hard times make you appreciate the good times. And if you've got a good mama, they need to be respected and admired and loved on today. Amen? Because we have no idea what they had to put up with. But because of them, we are where we are. And somebody needs to thank God for a mama today. Come on. Praise God.